Hi guys, Nikhil here. Welcome to Salesforce Troop. This is the fourth session of our JavaScript Developer Certification series, and today's topic is debugging and error handling. So let's move on to agenda for today's session. So we'll see first errors and its categories. Then we'll move on to syntax error. We'll see runtime error, logical error. Then we'll move on to error handling using try catch finally. Then we'll see what's the catch error object is. Then we'll see what's the throw operator. Then we'll see the on error method. After that, we will move into console methods. We'll see string substitution in console methods. Then we'll see how to use debugger keyword. And in last, we'll see debugging in browser with breakpoints. And this session consists 7% of the overall exam. So in exam you may get 3 to 4 questions from this session, but from the real time point of view this session will be very handy for you going forward, how to debug the programs in JavaScript like in real time, how you can debug. We'll see that today. So let's move on to our first topic, errors and its categories. So what is error? Everybody knows like error are the mistakes or faults in the program that cause our program to behave unexpectedly. And it is no doubt that the well-versed and experienced program also make mistakes. This is a generic definition. And most common types of error in JavaScript are syntax error, runtime error, and logical error. There are many others error, but these are the most common types of error you face in your real time. So let's go and see what is syntax error. So syntax error are the most basic kind of errors, also known as parsing errors. They occur at the compile time in traditional programming language or interpretation time in JavaScript. So syntax means you miss something, and definitely everybody knows now all syntax you should follow, otherwise we'll get the error. Quickly we'll go to our playground and see the error. Let's go to VS Code. I'll open my browser as well. So I already created a page. This is a index.html, and here I have a very basic code. I'll explain it. So this is the basic HTML5 code in which I have a body tag. So there I have created a h1 element, debugging and error handling session 4. Then I have a script. So within the script tag, whatever I'll write here, it will be my JavaScript. Here I'll write within the body tag, I'll write my HTML. So in script tag, I have creating a variable x and assigning a value 2 to that variable. Then I'm creating a variable y and initializing it with the value 3. And then in variable z, I'm just taking the sum of these two variables and storing it. And in console, I'm printing that value. And you can see here in the console, I'll zoom it. In console, you can see value 5 is printing. It's pretty well. But by mistake, I forgot to add this bracket. Now you'll see immediately will get an unexpected identifier, that is a syntax error. So whenever you miss something in your code as a syntax, like syntax is required to add the bracket and you miss that, so these sort of error are syntax error. This is very basic error and in all programming languages we have this error. Let's go back to our slides. Let's move on to the second error, that is runtime errors. Runtime errors, also called exceptions, occur during execution, after compilation or interpretation. So let's go to our playground again. I'll remove this code from my script tag and I'll create one console.log start. So console.log is a way of printing the data in the console. We'll learn about this method going forward, and I'm printing console.log end, and in between I'll call window dot any call Superman, any method name you can call. Okay, so what's happening here is this line is causing a runtime error because here the syntax is correct. Window is a object should have a method, but at the runtime when it's trying to call this method, it doesn't exist. So during the runtime, we are facing this issue. And if you see here, it's a type error, is not a function. So during the execution time, this error occurred. So these sort of error we called as runtime error. Let's go back to our slide and see the next error type, that is logical errors. So these errors are not the result of syntax or runtime. So instead, they occur when you make a mistake in your logic that drive your script and you do not get the result you expected. So let's go and see how logical error occurred. I'll go back to my playground. I'll keep my start as it is, keep my end console as it is, and here in my console now no error. I'll create, not here. Okay. I'm creating a value that is in the string form. I write Nikhil, and it's some sort of object I was trying to create. By mistake, I create this sort of stringify object, and now I want to print, or I want to convert this string to an object, and let's say let obj equal to, and now you immediately see there is an error coming, unexpected token n in JSON at position 1. So the problem here is, first thing, while writing my logic, I make a invalid JSON. This JSON is not valid, and because of which this JSON.parse is failing. So this is the logical one. Like, I forgot to create in a proper format, and proper format of string is like you should have a proper one. Just give me a second. It should be a name, and then it should be a nickel key value pair, and it should be wrapped with a string. Now if you see and I print my object in end console, now you see it's parsing the object correctly. So that is the logical error, the mistake in the logic that drive your script cause throw an error. So this was the error earlier, now it's a valid JSON, and that JSON is parsing correctly. So the question is how to handle these sort of error, because syntax error is pretty easy, because sometimes your editor will throw directly like there is something wrong in your code, or even the browser will throw directly a meaningful like there is an extra bracket or syntax is wrong. That is easy to debug. Even in the runtime you get to know because function is not approachable or reference errors are coming. But logical error is bit tricky, because if you go to the same logical error that we saw just now, unexpected token in JSON at position 7, you never able to think like which is JSON line 7 I need to look into, right? So to handle this sort of error, we have another topic in our slide, that is try, catch, and finally. So this is most common way of handling an error in all of the programming languages. So the try catch construct has two main block, that is try and catch, and one optional block finally. So block means this is a bracket, we call it block in JavaScript. So try is one block, catch is another block. So these two will run together. I mean, like for the syntax purpose, try and catch should be there. These are mandatory in the block. Finally, you can ignore. So you'll write your code inside that try block, And if any error or exception occurred, you can catch that error in your catch block. And sometimes you want to handle a scenario in which you want whether the error occurred or not, that particular use case should work, then that scenario should go to the finally block, and this is always executed regardless of an exception occurring, and this block is optional. Okay, so let's go and play around with try and catch block. So I'll create a basic syntax for you first so that you guys can remember. So always first try block executes. So for try block you need to just give the it, and you can see that you get immediately the syntax error missing catch or finally after try. Okay, so now after that we need a catch block. Catch will always catch an error, but in new JavaScript if you don't want to catch an error you can ignore these brackets as well. Now if there are no errors in your code here in the try block, then catch block will be ignored and the control flow to the next line if something is written here. And if you want some other thing to happen you can write finally as well here. So this is the basic syntax. Let's go and write the code here. So in the try first I write console.log hello from try block. Let's say error from catch block. I am finally. We wrote a script in which first it comes to try block. There is no error occurred here. So it print it in our console that you can see hello from try block. It will ignore the catch block. It will go to the finally block and it run the statement that's inside the finally block that you can see that. So this is the happy path. So in happy path, there is no error occurred. Everything goes very smooth. So now let's go and throw an error here as well. And I'll go with the same error, same example that we tried. I'll go with invalid JSON scenario and I'll print here array. Okay, now we'll see the execution. Would start coming from top to bottom, parsing from top to bottom. He finds the console.log. It prints in the console. That's fine. Then it finds an invalid JSON and it goes to the method json.parse. It immediately throws an error and it skips the execution of the code in the try block. So you can see that there is no hooray printed in the console. It immediately throws an error and that error was catch by the catch block and it runs the error statement that we have written in our console.log. So it's like error from the catch block and the finally statement will always run irrespective whether it's a success or a failure. So it runs. So this is one type of error handling in which we just got an error and we catch the error and we continue with our code execution. But if I go to my slides, I have mentioned below try catch works synchronously. So that's the important point to remember. So whenever you are writing your try catch block with asynchronous, you need to be very careful. Let's go and see an example. So I'll remove finally because it's an optional one. We'll play around with our basic structure. So in the try block, I'm creating set timeout. Now you guys know set timeout is a web API that gives us a delay to run our callback. We are saying run our this callback after 1 second or 1000 millisecond, and we'll print our log here. Hooray. And you can see hooray is printing. This is the happy path of our asynchronous approach, because set timeout makes our code asynchronous in some sense. So now suppose there is an error occurred while running the callback. So to make an error, I'll write some gibberish here, ABC. Okay. Now you see that the code start executing from top to bottom. It comes to set timeout. It sees, okay, there is no error here because this function is not yet executed, and it passed the code execution to the next line. So to prove that, I'll put one more console outside try and catch. Okay, so it's outside try and catch. Now you can see outside try and catch is running, and then after that another error is coming. That is not the error that we are catching in our catch block, because the time this function execute, we are out of our try and catch block. So this is the problem with asynchronous error handling, and to solve this issue you can write another try catch inside our set timeout. That is, when this function runs, we'll catch that error again. So this is a way you can handle your try catch in your asynchronous approach. So once it goes, finally it printed outside try catch, it prints well. Then after 1 second this function got executed, and then we have another try and catch to check whether our data is correct or not, and if it's failed, we are printing set timeout exception won't work. Now is working, we can say is working. You can see we able to catch the error and printing the custom error. So this is how our try and catch block works. Let's go to our slides. So the next topic is catch error object, because till now we have seen the syntax. There is a try block, there is a catch block. In the catch block there is a parameter or error, but we haven't used that error. So that is the catch error object. When an error occurs, JavaScript generates an object containing the detail about it, and the object is then passed as an argument to a catch block. So that argument contain name, message, and stack. So name is the name of the error, and message the textual message about the error details, and stack is the current call stack, a string with information about the sequence of nested calls that led to an error. So it's very helpful during the debugging. Let's go and see this. So I'll remove this all. Try, click try block. I'll click catch block, and in catch block I said it's an error argument, and that error argument contain console.log error.name. So it has, this is an object, so we can use dot notation to access the property. So there is a property called name inside this object. There is a property called message in this object, and there is another property called stack. So name gives us the name of the error, like reference error. Message gives the textual message about the error details. There are no standard properties available in most environment, and this is most widely used and supported in most of the JavaScript code. So this message gives us a, like, hello is not defined, and there is a stack. So this gives us the name colon message both together, like is not defined in give some call stack references, or you instead of going to the first, okay, we'll go with this structure only, and I'll say hello. So hello is now where defined, so it will throw an exception. Okay, it throw an exception and error objects comes to the console. In that we are picking up the name, so name is the reference error. Message hello is not defined, and stack is giving us hello is not defined and giving a line number for our debugging purpose. So if I click it here, it will take me where is the error occurring. So if you see, it's take us to the exact line where the error is causing an issue, that is hello, and here is hello. So let's go back to my console, and this is the error object, and it's very helpful when you want to show some meaningful messages and all. And if you don't want to destructure, means you don't want the property, you can console directly an error that gives us a whole error that converts your message in the form of name colon message. So name was the reference error and message was the hello is not defined. So this is how error object of catch works. Let's go back to our slides again. Let's move on to next topic. So next topic is throw operator. Throw statement is used to generate user defined exception. So sometimes you want to generate exception at yourself. During runtime, when a throw statement is encountered, execution of the current function will stop and control will be passed to the first catch clause in the call stack. So if during the execution, if the throw statement encounter will stop the execution and I immediately go to the first catch block that is catching the exception. If there is no clause or catch block, the program will terminate. So let's go and see the throw operator. I'll go with the same structure. I'll create a variable called name Nikhil, and here in my try block I'm gonna check if name equal to Nikhil, then throw some error. So my syntax is very simple: throw and the message something wrong with the name. Else we can say console.log all good, and we're gonna print this in the error if error occurred. So now if you see, it's printing something wrong with the name. So syntax here is through is the keyword, and the string form you can pass the message, and it's printing the error, and its error is very simple string format. But when we saw earlier, error was giving us in the form of name. If I write error dot name, it should give me the error name. It's giving undefined here. If I type message, it should give me the message, so it is giving message. And this is happening because we are throwing directly a string, we are not throwing the error as it is. So to achieve that scenario, there is a property called there is the error constructor, and you know, to call the error constructor you need to write new, then the capital error, and pass the string that you want to pass, or the error message that you want to pass. Now you see it throws a proper error. Earlier it was throwing a string of error. Now it's a proper error that will have proper name. So the name here is error, and the message is something wrong with the name. So if I print now message, and now you see it print the message, and if I do name, I print the name. And throw operator we usually use when we want to throw an exception explicitly in our code. And now let's go to the most interesting topic, not this one, after this. So we'll go and see what is on error method. So when the JavaScript form, this was the only way of error handling in JavaScript. So on error event handler was the first feature to facilitate error handling in JavaScript, and the error event is fired on the window object whenever an exception occurred on the page. Let's go to our playground and see this. So this was a very old trick when we were in the initial days when there was no try and catch block was available. So I'll create an image tag, and I'll say source is image.gif, and I said whenever I can use it in any form, whether as a property or a event listener or any other way. So I'm using on error as a property or attribute here, and I'm saying whenever an error occurred in the window, call this function, my function. I'll create this function. So function name, and whenever an error occurred, just say the image is not loading, not be loading. And now you can see there is alert box coming. The image could not be loaded because we don't have this image in our folder structure or anywhere, so we can't load this image. And immediately on error trigger this method because this is an error, because here you can see not found, and immediately call this function. And this was an old trick to catch an error. So let's go back to our slides again. The next topic is console method. So in web browser, console is a tool, and in before starting this topic, you will definitely get two questions from this console methods in your certification exams. So in web browser, console is a tool that help us to log information associated with a web page like error, warning, network request, etc. In JavaScript, the console is an object which provides access to the browser debugging console, and console objects provide us several different methods. So now we'll go and see what are all different methods and how and when to use which method. So first we'll start with the console.log. So it prints the message to the browser console. It is useful for testing. When you are testing something, you want to print something, you can use browser.log. And its syntax is message and the argument. I'll take it in next slide, but we'll pass the message and it prints the message. Let's go to our playground and see how it works. I'll remove this image tag. I'll remove this function. Okay, it prints everything clear now in console. So I said but log, I want to print some logs. So any log can be, we can print. So I can say hello everyone. So this is a log, and sometime in our program we want to see whether the data is coming from a variable, so you can assign that variable to the log. It will print that log, so we get to know, okay, this is how the log works. Then we'll go to the another one, that is warn, that is for warning. Like in many projects, if you work with especially with React.js or Angular, you would have seen many browser throws and warning messages like this API is deprecating in future, or this attribute is required accessibility. And yeah, in many website we have seen for accessibility purpose you give alt message in your tags. So that's the warning message. So we'll go and create a warn message. So to create the warning, you need to type console dot log, not log. We are talking about warning. So for warning, it's a warn. I'll say Warning message. Image element must have a alt prop either with a meaningful text or an empty string for a decorative image. Okay, and if you're not able to see uh, in your console, then we need to do some setting. And for that setting, you need to go to custom level, enable your warnings. Now you can see that our warning is printing here, and there are some other warnings given by my extension Grammarly. So this is how the warning message works. And okay, now we are back. This is how warning works. Let's go to the slides back. The third one is error, and it prints the error message to the browser console. So whenever you print a console in your catch block, always prefer a console.error. And I was showing you with the console.log because we haven't learned this. That's why I was showing you this. Now let's go and see how console.error works and what's the benefit of this. Say error e is small from the exam point of view. Just remember this, and we can say server is not running. You will see error. First thing, it comes with a proper red syntax like a danger warning or error, and you will get the your stack trace like the line number where the error occurred, and it's very helpful from the debugging point of view. So that's why whenever you write your catch block and try block, so it's always console.error instead of console.log under your catch block. And the last one here is the console.info, and it prints an information message to the console. So we'll go back. So sometime you want to say in your information you want to give near version of LWC is available. So if you want to give some information, just go with the info. That makes more sense here. So these are the basics one that with the console and helpful. Most commonly used one are the log and the error messages. And the next one is string substitution. Very important topic from exam point of view. And in exam they're gonna ask different types of features from string substitution in console method. So just remember, string substitution works only with these four types of console method: log, error, info, and warning. It means the basic methods. When passing a string to one of the console object method that accepts a string, you may use a string substitution. And these are different types of string substitution. Let's go and see that makes it more clear what is string substitution. So I'll say console.log. We'll go with console.log only. That's easy to remember. So I'll say hello. I want to give some name dynamically here. I'll say percentage s. This is a string substitution. We'll say you have called me. Then you want a number substitution. Some number should come dynamically times. And object is, we can substitute the object as well. Send to. So with the first argument as a string, you can substitute string, number, or an object, and after that you pass the argument in the same sequence in which you are adding your what we call substitution. So we are saying hello Nikhil. Then second argument is you have called me 10 times, and the object is, I can create an object quickly above this. I create a object and I'm passing that object. Now if you see the final output here, hello Nikhil, you have called me 10 times, and object is this. So string substitution or number substitution or object substitution is possible in all four method: log, info, or your error, or your one. So it works with all. So just remember this from exam point of view especially. So string substitution works for four method, and there are, you can even append the floating values. So let's go to now exciting console things that you may or may not heard of. So there is a feature called console.tab table, console.table, that take the table data and the table column. It prints the data in the tabular form. Table data, it should be an either an object or an array, and the table column specifies the which column or the array property you want to print in the tabular form. Okay, so let's go and create a table, and this is one of my favorite actually. I'll just remove the other warning especially so that our debuggers be very clear. We already have an object. Now if I print this object console.log, it not looks very clear. We have to open this, then we have to open this to read this. To make it more readable, change this log to table, and now see the magic. Now you have a proper tabular form of your array of object, and now you can see name and language. Suppose there are many fields and you want the selected fields only, then you can pass the table column. Suppose I want only name. Now you can see it's gonna print only the name property. So this is a very good trick that helps you to debug, to understand your data, what form of data is coming. And let's go to the next one. The next one is the console time and console time end. This is most commonly used to calculate how much time your function or your API is taking. And let's go and see this method. I'll remove this from here. I'll create a function call API. We'll call console.time and give a label name. So this is the parameter which is used to give a name to a timer, and it's an optional field, but it's good to give if you are using multiple console.time in your program, then it's good to give you a proper label. And then we'll write a fetch call. Fetch API is used to call the API. I'll just copy paste. So I'm calling a API that will take the response, convert that data stream into the JSON format. Once the JSON receive, it will say okay, and the time. So it immediately says okay, that service is completed. When I call this method call API, it will call start the timer, immediately hit the service, and once the service is completed, it stop the timer, and we'll see how much time it taking to print that. Okay, and we don't need this bracket, and after this I'll call this method, and let's see what it prints. So we are printing our JSON value in the console.table format only, that is coming from our API, that is user ID, title, completed and all. And now you can see it take 1.2 millisecond, almost like 128.9 milliseconds. So it's 1.2, 1 second, 289 something values. So this is how you can calculate your API time, or sometime you need to calculate the performance of a function. So this method is very helpful from performance testing point of view. Let's go to the next one. The next one is the group one, and that is very helpful when you want to group your data. Let's go and see this as well. So I'll remove this altogether. I'll create array of object. There are many and that, and we'll run a for each loop. Now you all know how it works. I'm using an arrow function, and I'm saying printing logs, that is name is language developer, so it will be like Nikhil is a JavaScript developer, first log. Then it's Nikhil is 23 years old. Then we are printing Nikhil is the developer name. So if you see the console, it's very tough to read like this. So it would be easy if we group this console or the data based on something. So there is a way to achieve that as well. So there is a property called console.group. I'll say group it by item.name, and then I'll say and this group end. There is a property called group end with the same name. Whatever the label you pass to this, it should be same. So here we'll say start the grouping and end the grouping in between. Now you, if you see, it's so easy to read. Okay, what message to the which users? For Nikhil, we have three messages. Nikhil is a JavaScript developer. Nikhil is a 23-year-old. Nikhil is the developer name. Similarly with the Smith. Similarly with the Warner. So this is also one cleaner way to debug and to understand your data. Let's go back to the slides and see next one, that is debugger. So debugger is a keyword or a statement invoked any available debugging functionality, and such as setting a breakpoint. If no debugging functionality is available, the statement has no effect. So it's, if you don't know what it is, we'll see, and I'll show you how to debug the code now. So we are in our playground, and let me create a button for you here. Button, let me give an id button btn. Here is our button. We'll write some function, and to attach an event listener, we'll write let element equal to document dot event add event listener. Which event we want to add? It's a click event, and what it should do, it should attach a button handler btn handler. I'll say a button handler. Button handler is a function that will receive an event because it's coming from the DOM, and we'll print this consoles inside start event and the end. And we did a mistake here. We need to do let element equal to document dot query selector. We'll fetch first our button, and then we'll add our event listener to that button. First we are fetching the element from the DOM, that is this. Once this element is available in this variable, we are attaching an event handler click, and that will take this callback as a function. So when I click here, it will print something. Okay, now I have a scenario in which I am facing some issue after event. So I want to see what's happening at that point. So there is a technique to put the breakpoint. So you just write debugger, and now if I click, you will see browser stop the execution at this point in the browser. So now if you see, immediately it stopped the execution. It put the debugger and it stopped the execution at the keyword where I have added the keyword debugger. And now if you want to do something to test something, what's the value at event, you can hover over it, you can fetch the value, you can print the value. So this is how you can put the debugging points, and this is a very good way to figure out which function is calling when. So you just put the debugger point and play around with your website or the code, so it stop the execution. And debugger is very famous technique, so I'll play a little bit more around debugger points. So If I want to do something, I can hover it. Hover gives me the value, whichever value I want to check. I can, as the execution is already stopped, so I just copy the event, go to the console. If I print this, it will print that. If I say dot target, I want to see which element was it, so it will show I'm coming. This event is coming from button, so you can play around it very easily with the debugger. Okay, so let's go to our slides once quickly. And the last topic is debugging in browser with breakpoints. And let's go, and I'll remove my debugger from here. And let's go to our page. Now we'll play around it. I'll show you how actually the debugging works in Chrome. So how to open a debugger, we'll go from that. Either you can press Control Shift I, or you can right click on your page and select Inspect. So Inspect has many tabs. Most commonly used is the Elements. Elements is the DOM that shows you the DOM, what nodes or elements are using to build this application. Then we have a Network tabs. Network tabs is to use to see what all APIs are hitting. Then the Console tab to play around with the console, and most commonly used for debugging. It has this console sidebar, we called it source bar as well. So if you press this, it shows you all the source that it has. And instead of this application, we'll go to the salesforce.com. Okay, we'll see everything from that point of view. That gives you a better understanding. So this is the Salesforce website. I do a right click, I'll go to an inspect. Now my debugger is on. Now I'll go to source. If I click this, it will open the source bar. It will show me the all files that this website is using, what all images they are using, what all other website, other data they are using, in which form it's using. So this is the source bar. You can figure it out which all library they are using, Google APIs, font APIs, which font they are using, which family they are using, Lato and all, everything you can able to figure out. After this, if you open a JS file and you're not able to understand what's going on, you can prettify it by using this curly bracket. So if I click this, now the code become readable. That is another technique to help you in debugging. Then apart from that, there is a network tab that shows you what all services they have hit. So if I reduce the size, there was an event that shows this URL was hit. This was a post call. The status code comes. What is the IP address? What all things you can figure out easily in the network tab. You can check the performances. You can record the performances here. And there is memory. You can check that heap snapshot, how much memory it's taking in loading the page and all things. Then there is a application where you can check that what all the things there in the local storage or the session storage, what they are storing in the local storage or in the session storage. You can easily able to see that. Then there is a security tag just to make sure whether your API website is totally secure with the valid certificates or not. So these are the most common tags. I'll come back to the console tab. Now in exam, they will ask you some this kind of questions as well. Like there are some elements on the web page and you want to remove that element, how you will do that. So there is one way in which you just hover this, click on this arrow icon. This is a select an element of the page. So if I hit this, I select this, it will show me this is the page. And if I want to remove this text that is connect to your customer in a whole, I'll just do a right click, delete an element, and it's deleted that element. But there is a catch over here, is like if there are hundreds element, you can't go individually to do that, and this sort of question will be indefinitely in the exam. And to achieve that scenario, You have to figure out, suppose there is a property called um, element with a class column container. Let's see how many elements are there with this name, document dot query selector. You can write your all commands here. I'll say find me all the element that has this class. Now you can see it's using in 37 places. So wherever I'll hover, it will take me to that line where all it's using. And now if I want to remove all the elements that have this class, I'll just say for each, and I'll say item dot remove. And this, if it is 37, it consists most of the website. So if I do, I guess whole website will go off. Take the whole containers that was there. Now you can see the website, all elements are gone, only the header and the footers are remaining now. So this is another technique. You can write your queries here directly to play around or to fetch the data, to fetch the images. I'll show you another technique. Suppose you want to fetch an image from an web page. Okay, suppose I'll go here, I'll hover this, it show me, okay, this is the element. If I say I'll keep the focus, come back to console, I'll write $0 and hit enter. It fetch me the same element where I put the focus. And if I say dot source, it gives me the URL of that or the source of that image. So if I open this, it will give me the same image exactly. So now you can see it's giving me the same image. So this is the another debugging technique. Now we'll go to our page back and see how we can debug it here with the breakpoints. So instead of putting a debugger, sometimes it's better to put a breakpoint. Go to your file under the source. If you're not able to find your file, just press Ctrl P and type your file name. My file name is index.js. That is the first file. So if you see here, there are lines, many line numbers are there, and I want to debug something at line number 53. Just click on line number 53. Now you will see there is a red dot coming. It means we are dynamically appending a breakpoint here. So whenever a code runs and it comes to this function or to this line, it will stops here. So now if I click me, now you see we got our breakpoints here. Now the code execution stops here. And this is called debugger points as well. And now here, if you see, here as well as here you can use. So if you want the execution to go immediately or run the whole code, you just click this, it resumes the script execution, it works fine. I click it again. Now if you want to go to the next line but you don't want to put the debugger, so you can click this icon. It will stop immediately to jump to the next one. And there are many other things that you can handle, like if you are want to catch some, add some expression to watch immediately, you can add it here, any value. Right now it's already events we are catching, so you can add that event. Right now there is not much in the project, but you can catch that. In the scope, you can see that what all the local scope. So local scope, this is the local scope, in this event is the local scope of this function. You can check that scopes as well. And there are, if there are many breakpoints in the project, like in this file, so you can, it will show you the all breakpoints and where it's added. So in line number 53 and line number 55 with the file name, you can do that. If there are a breakpoint on your service call, you can check that as well. So many things you can do that. So these are the common techniques to debug it. I very rarely use console techniques until unless I have to understand the data. I usually go with the source debugging techniques. That's more easy because you can jump it or you can see the whole flow how the code execution is happening, and it's more helpful from my point of view. And there are many techniques, but these are the common techniques for from exam point of view mainly. And I'm pretty sure this session is very helpful for you guys from exam, more than exam, from real time debugging point of view. And this is all from my side. And before ending this session, let's go quickly to our exam guide and see what we have learned today. So this was our fourth session in which the topic are how to handle errors that we already seen with a try and catch block, how to use the debug keyword, how to use the console and the breakpoints. So we covered all the scenarios, and this is the 7% of the overall exam. So if you guys have any question or any query, you can ask me in the comment anytime. And if I am wrong somewhere, you can highlight that as well. And thanks for your time. Have a great day.